I saw my wife on the hallway camera wearing a dress I'd never seen before. It was past midnight on a Tuesday, and I was in the garage fixing my Ford's transmission when the motion alert buzzed on my phone. The grainy footage showed Aven slipping through our front door in a red dress that hugged her curves like expensive silk. She moved carefully, like someone sneaking past sleeping children, though our son Jace had moved out months ago. The timestamp read 12:47 a.m. I screenshotted the frame and saved the clip to my phone. My wife of 16 years, the ambitious attorney who complained about having no time for anything, had apparently found time to buy designer clothes and slip out of our house in the middle of the night. Interesting wardrobe choice for insomnia, I muttered, wiping grease from my hands. Aven's car wasn't in the driveway. I grabbed my keys. Following someone at night in a mid-sized upstate city isn't like the movies. The streets are mostly empty, traffic lights blink yellow, and every turn feels obvious. I kept 3 blocks back, watching her silver Lexus navigate toward downtown. She pulled into the Riverside Hotel, the fancy place with valet parking and marble columns. I parked across the street behind a delivery truck and watched her walk through the main entrance. 5 minutes later, a black BMW pulled up. The driver was tall, well-dressed, probably 40-something. He handed his keys to the valet and walked inside. I circled the building and found the service entrance. A maintenance worker was propping the door open while he hauled cleaning supplies from his van. "Excuse me," I called. "My wife left her phone in the bar. Mind if I slip through?" He shrugged and waved me past. The service corridor led to the hotel's main floor. I could hear piano music and conversation from the bar area. I pulled out my phone and activated the camera as I approached. The bar was dimly lit, all leather chairs and crystal glasses. I spotted Aven immediately. She sat in a corner booth with the BMW driver, leaning close while he whispered something that made her laugh. Her hand rested on his forearm. I photographed the entrance sign with its posted employee conduct policies, including the bolded section about undisclosed vendor relationships. Then I recorded a 30-second video of their intimate conversation. The man's face was familiar. Rylan Cross, senior vendor coordinator from her law firm's biggest client. I'd met him at company parties, watched him glad hand partners while eyeing their wives. I left through the same service door. At home, I uploaded everything to my laptop and printed divorce papers from a legal template site. I attached still frames from the video as exhibits. The timestamp was clear. 1:23 a.m. Tuesday night while I was supposedly asleep. When Aven crept back in at 3:30, I was waiting in the kitchen with coffee and paperwork. "We need to talk," I said. She froze in the doorway, still wearing that red dress. Up close, it was even more expensive looking than I'd thought. "Soren, you scared me. Why are you awake?" "Interesting question. Why are you?" I slid the printed photos across the kitchen table. Her face went pale as she recognized herself in the hotel bar. "It's not what it looks like." "Really?" "Because it looks like my wife sneaking out to meet another man, in a dress I've never seen, at a hotel bar after midnight." She sat down heavily, her hands shaking. "Soren, please. It was just a kiss. Nothing more happened." "Just a kiss?" "I swear. We talked, we had a drink, and yes, we kissed, but that's all." I felt terrible immediately. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Could you repeat that? For the record?" "What? Why are you—" "Just repeat what you told me. About the kiss." She looked directly at the camera. "It was just a kiss, Soren. Nothing more." I saved the video and set the phone down. "Thank you for your honesty." "Are you really going to file those papers?" "I haven't decided yet, but I have some other business to handle first." The next morning, I researched the Riverside Hotel's corporate structure. It was owned by a hospitality company with strict vendor conduct policies. I found their compliance email and drafted a professional inquiry. To whom it may concern, I witnessed what appeared to be an undisclosed personal relationship between a senior vendor representative and a client attorney at your Riverside location on Tuesday evening. As this may violate your posted conduct policies, I'm providing photographic evidence and timestamps for your review. I attached the photos and video hash codes, included my contact information, and hit send. Then I went to work like nothing had happened. I'm a mechanical engineer for the city's water treatment facility. Not glamorous, but steady work that keeps the pipes flowing and the lights on. My colleagues know me as the guy who fixes things other people break, who stays late to solve problems nobody else wants to touch. "You look tired," said my supervisor Tom when I arrived. "Long night troubleshooting the house plumbing." Always something with old houses. My wife wants to renovate our kitchen, but I keep telling her we need to fix the foundation first. Smart approach. Surface problems usually run deeper. 2 days later, my phone rang during lunch break. "Mr. Valden? This is Patricia Chen from Morrison Hospitality Group. We received your compliance inquiry regarding the Riverside Hotel." "Yes, thank you for calling. We've initiated a vendor conduct review based on your evidence. The individuals in question have been notified, and the vendor's access to client entertainment accounts has been suspended pending investigation. I appreciate you taking this seriously. We have zero tolerance for conduct that compromises our business relationships. The scheduled conference between the vendor's company and the law firm has been canceled." I thanked her and hung up, then called Aven's office. "Valden and Associates, this is Jennifer." "Hi Jennifer, it's Soren. Is Aven available?" "She's in a meeting with the partners. Something about a client conference being canceled. She seemed pretty upset." "I'll try her cell. Thanks." I didn't call her cell. Instead, I drove to the courthouse and filed the divorce papers with their attached exhibits. The clerk stamped them and scheduled a hearing date. When I got home, Aven's car was in the driveway. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, typing frantically. "The Morrison account conference got canceled," she said without looking up. "Someone filed a complaint about vendor conduct violations. Ryland's been removed from our account entirely. That's unfortunate. Soren, this is serious. That account represents 30% of our firm's revenue. If we lose them because of some anonymous troublemaker..." Her phone buzzed. She answered without checking the caller ID. "Aven Valden." "What? When?" "I see. Yes, I understand." She hung up and stared at her phone. "What was that about?" "The court clerk. Someone filed divorce papers today, with photographic evidence." I pulled the stamped copies from my briefcase and set them on the table next to her laptop. Karma didn't need my help, but I gave it a push anyway. Aven stared at the divorce papers like they were written in a foreign language. Her perfectly manicured fingers traced the court stamp, the hearing date, the exhibit labels. "You planned this," she whispered. "The compliance complaint, the vendor audit, everything. I documented what I observed and reported it to the appropriate authorities. What happened next was their decision. Don't give me that corporate speak, Soren. You deliberately sabotaged my career." I sat down across from her and folded my hands. "Your career sabotaged itself the moment you decided to sneak out in that red dress. It was one mistake. One kiss. One kiss that you recorded yourself confessing to. One kiss with a vendor who could influence your firm's biggest account. One kiss that happened while you were lying to me about working late." She closed her laptop and rubbed her temples. "What do you want? An apology? Counseling? I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I want honesty, starting with how long this has been going on. I told you it was just the dress, Aven. That dress costs more than my monthly salary. When did you buy it? Where? Who were you planning to impress?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Mila helped me pick it out. She said I needed something sophisticated for client dinners." Mila Garvin, Aven's best friend and colleague, the firm's rising star who always seemed to know everyone's business before they did. "Interesting that Mila would encourage you to buy expensive clothes for meeting vendors." "It wasn't like that. She was trying to help me feel confident." Confident enough to cheat on your husband? I didn't cheat. It was one kiss, one moment of weakness. Rylan was going through a divorce, he was vulnerable, and I felt sorry for him. So you comforted him with your mouth. She flinched. That's cruel. Cruel is sneaking out of our house at midnight to meet another man. Cruel is lying to my face for weeks while you planned your little rendezvous. Cruel is making me feel paranoid for noticing that my wife had become a stranger. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother Eli. Need to talk. It's about Aven. I have to go, I said, standing up. We'll continue this conversation later. Where are you going? To get some answers. Eli owned a small auto repair shop on the south side of town. He specialized in classic cars and custom work, the kind of place where guys went to tinker and avoid their problems. I found him under the hood of a 1970 Mustang, cursing at a stubborn carburetor. Hand me that wrench, he said without looking up. The 9/16. I passed him the tool. You said you needed to talk. Yeah, about your wife. He straightened up and wiped his hands on a rag. She's been using my shop. Using it how? Meeting someone here. That fancy lawyer type with the BMW. They've been coming by after hours, using my office to talk privately. My stomach dropped. How long? 3 weeks, maybe 4. She said it was business, something about needing a neutral location for sensitive client meetings. I didn't think much of it until I heard about the vendor audit. Why didn't you tell me? Because she's your wife, and I figured if something was wrong, you'd handle it. But after what happened with the hotel thing, you know about the hotel? Small town, brother. Word gets around, especially when someone's marriage implodes and takes a major business account with it. I leaned against his workbench. What exactly did you see? Talking, mostly. Sitting close. Once I caught them holding hands, but they separated when they saw me. He paused. Look, I'm not saying she's a terrible person, but she's not the woman you married. No kidding. There's something else. The BMW guy, Rylan, he's been asking questions about you. Your schedule, your hobbies, where you go after work. What kind of questions? Whether you work out, whether you have a temper, whether you've ever been violent, like he was worried about something. Or planning something. My phone rang. Aven's number. Are you coming home for dinner? Probably not. I'm processing some new information about my wife's business meetings. Silence. Then, what's that supposed to mean? Ask Eli. Or better yet, ask Rylan. I'm sure he has opinions about my schedule. I hung up and turned back to my brother. I need a favor. Name it. If they show up here again, call me. Don't let on that you told me anything. Just give me a heads up. You got it. But Soren, be careful. Guys like that BMW character, they don't fight fair. Neither do I. I drove to Murphy's boxing gym, my sanctuary for the past 10 years. The place smelled like leather and sweat, echoing with the rhythm of heavy bags and jump ropes. Coach Mike was working with a young fighter, calling out combinations. Jab, cross, hook, keep your guard up. I changed into workout gear and started warming up on the speed bag. The repetitive motion helped clear my head, the steady rhythm drowning out the chaos of the last few days. You're hitting that thing like it owes you money, Coach Mike said, walking over after his fighter finished. Marriage problems. The kind that end in divorce or the kind that end in assault charges? Hopefully the first one. He nodded and handed me some gloves. Let's work the heavy bag. Channel that energy into something productive. For the next hour, I pounded leather and tried to make sense of my situation. Aven's affair was bad enough, but the premeditation made it worse. The expensive dress, the secret meetings at Eli's shop, the questions about my temperament, it all suggested planning, not impulse. Your footwork's getting sloppy, Coach Mike called out. Stay focused. I reset my stance and threw a combination. Jab, cross, hook, just like he'd taught me. Simple, direct, effective. Better. Remember, boxing isn't about anger, it's about control. What if control isn't enough? Then you make sure you're the one left standing. When I got home, Aven was in the living room with our son Jace. At 19, he had his mother's sharp features and her talent for making everything my fault. Dad, Mom told me about the divorce papers. What's wrong with you? Hello to you too, son. This is serious. You're destroying her career over nothing. Nothing? Is that what she told you? Aven shot me a warning look. I told him we're having problems, that's all. Problems. I sat down in my recliner. Jace, did your mother mention why I filed for divorce? She said you're having trust issues, that you're paranoid and controlling. Interesting interpretation. Dad, she's finally successful, making real money, and you can't handle it. It's pathetic. The words stung because they contained a grain of truth. Aven's income had surpassed mine years ago, and yes, sometimes I felt diminished by her success. But that wasn't why I was divorcing her. Your mother is having an affair, I said quietly. That's not true, Aven snapped. She admitted it, on camera. Jace looked between us, confused. What camera? I pulled out my phone and played the video of Aven's confession. It was just a kiss, Soren. Nothing more. The room went silent. Jace stared at his mother, then at me. One kiss, Aven said defensively. One mistake. How long has this been going on? Jace asked. It hasn't been going on. It was one evening, one moment of weakness. With a vendor from her firm, I added. Which is why his company lost their account and her conference got canceled. You did that on purpose, Jace accused. I reported what I observed to the appropriate authorities. They made their own decisions based on their policies. You're splitting hairs, Dad. You wanted to hurt her, so you did. I wanted the truth. Everything else was consequence. Jace stood up. I can't deal with this right now. I'm staying at Mom's apartment. What apartment? She rented a place downtown, didn't she tell you? I looked at Aven. No, she didn't. It's temporary, she said. Until we figure things out. When did you rent it? Last week. Before or after the hotel meeting? She didn't answer. Before, I concluded. You rented an apartment, bought an expensive dress, and started meeting your boyfriend at my brother's shop. All before that spontaneous kiss. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The only question is, how long you've been planning this. Jace grabbed his jacket. I'm not listening to this anymore. Son, wait. No, Dad. You've made your choice. Now live with it. He left with his mother, and I was alone in the house we'd shared for 16 years. The silence was deafening. I poured myself a drink and sat in my chair, thinking about Coach Mike's words. Boxing isn't about anger, it's about control. But what happens when the other fighter won't follow the rules? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk, Rylan. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, I'm listening. Not over text. Meet me tomorrow at the Riverside Hotel Bar, 7 p.m. The scene of the crime? How poetic. Just be there. I set the phone down and finished my drink. Round 1 was over, and I'd won on points. But the fight was far from finished. The Riverside Hotel Bar looked different in daylight. Less romantic, more like what it was, an overpriced tourist trap with pretentious cocktails and leather chairs that had seen better days. I arrived early and chose a table with a clear view of the entrance. Rylan Cross walked in at exactly 7 p.m., wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. He was the kind of handsome that came from good genetics and expensive grooming, the type who'd never worked with his hands or worried about paying bills. He spotted me immediately and walked over with the confident stride of someone accustomed to getting his way. Soren Valden, I presume. That's me, the paranoid, controlling husband. He sat down without being invited. I think we got off on the wrong foot. Really? Because from where I sit, you're the one who got off with my wife. A waitress approached. Rylan ordered a top-shelf whiskey. I stuck with beer. Look, he said after she left. I know how this looks, but it's not what you think. Everyone keeps telling me that. Maybe you should explain what it actually is. Aven and I have been working together on a complex merger. The Morrison account involves multiple subsidiaries, international contracts, regulatory compliance issues. We needed privacy to discuss sensitive information. So you met at my brother's auto shop. He paused, clearly not expecting me to know about that. Neutral territory, away from office politics and potential leaks. And the hotel meeting? Celebrating the preliminary agreement. We'd been working 18-hour days for weeks. Celebrating with kissing. That was... He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. That was unprofessional. We both had too much to drink. Emotions were running high after months of stress. It was a mistake. A mistake that cost you the account. Yes, thanks to your anonymous complaint. You're welcome. Our drinks arrived. He took a sip of his whiskey and studied me over the rim. What do you want, Soren? Money? A public apology? Your wife back? I want the truth. I just gave it to you. No, you gave me a carefully crafted story designed to minimize your liability. But I'm not a corporate board or a compliance officer. I'm the husband you disrespected, and I want the whole truth. He set down his glass. Fine. Your wife is brilliant, beautiful, and underappreciated. She works twice as hard as the male partners for half the recognition. She deserves better than a small-town life with a blue-collar husband who resents her success. There it is. She didn't pursue me, if that's what you're thinking. I pursued her, because she's worth pursuing. And now? Now I'm persona non grata at her firm. My company has suspended me pending investigation, and my own divorce proceedings have become complicated thanks to your little surveillance operation. You're getting divorced too? Have been for 6 months. My wife hired a private investigator who's been documenting my activities. Your photos and videos just gave her more ammunition. The pieces clicked into place. So you're not just cheating on my wife, you're cheating on your wife with my wife. It's more complicated than that. It always is. I finished my beer and signaled for another. Here's what I think happened. You saw an opportunity to mix business with pleasure, targeted a married woman who was feeling undervalued, and started an affair disguised as professional collaboration. That's cynical. That's accurate. The question is whether Aven was a willing participant or a victim of manipulation. She's not a victim. She's a grown woman who made her own choices, influenced by a man with more experience in corporate seduction. He laughed bitterly. You really don't know your wife, do you? She's not some innocent small-town attorney who got swept off her feet. She's ambitious, calculating, and perfectly capable of using people to get what she wants. Meaning? Meaning she approached me about the Morrison account. She suggested the private meetings. She bought that red dress specifically to get my attention. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. You're lying. Am I? Ask her about the promotion she's been angling for. Ask her about the partnership track she's been discussing with Mila Garvin. Ask her why she really rented that downtown apartment. What about the apartment? It's not temporary, and it's not a separation space. It's her new life, the one that doesn't include you. He finished his whiskey and stood up. I'm sorry this happened, Soren. Not sorry for being with your wife. She's an amazing woman, but sorry that you had to find out this way. Where are you going? To pack. My company is transferring me to the West Coast. Fresh start, new opportunities. Running away? Strategic retreat. There's a difference. He pulled out his wallet and left a 20 on the table. For what it's worth, you handled this better than most men would have. The corporate complaint was clever, professional revenge instead of personal violence. Who says I'm finished? Aren't you? You got your divorce papers filed, you destroyed my career, you exposed the affair. What more is there? I guess we'll find out. He walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a growing suspicion that I'd been played by experts. The affair wasn't a spontaneous attraction between colleagues. It was a calculated move in a larger game I didn't fully understand. I paid the tab and drove to Aven's downtown apartment. It was in a converted warehouse district, the kind of trendy neighborhood that attracted young professionals and empty nesters with money to spend on urban lifestyle. Her building had a secure entrance, but I knew her patterns. She always went for a run at 8 p.m., rain or shine, part of her obsessive fitness routine. I parked across the street and waited. Sure enough, she emerged in running gear and headed toward the Riverside Trail. I gave her a 5-minute head start, then used the building directory to find her apartment number. A delivery driver was propping open the main door while he carried packages inside. "Excuse me," I said, grabbing the door as he passed. "Forgot my keycard." He nodded and continued with his deliveries. Aven's apartment was on the 4th floor. I took the stairs and found 4B, then listened at the door. Silence. I tried the handle, locked, obviously, but noticed the welcome mat was slightly askew. I lifted it and found a spare key. "Trusting," I muttered, letting myself in. The apartment was exactly what I'd expected. Minimalist furniture, expensive art, everything arranged for maximum impact. It looked like a showroom, not a home. I walked through the living room, kitchen, and bedroom, taking photos with my phone. The closet was full of new clothes, including several dresses I'd never seen. The bathroom counter held expensive cosmetics and perfumes. On the bedroom nightstand, I found a leather portfolio. Inside were documents related to the Morrison account, correspondence with Mila Garvin about partnership opportunities, and a handwritten note that made my chest tighten. "Aven, the plan is working perfectly. R is completely hooked, and S suspects nothing. Once the merger closes and you make partner, we can phase out the vendor relationship and focus on the real prize. Your devoted friend, M." The note was dated 3 weeks ago. I photographed it and continued searching. In the kitchen drawer, I found more correspondence, including emails printed from Mila's account. The subject lines told the story. Target acquired, Phase 2 initiated, contingency planning. My wife's affair wasn't a moment of weakness or even a calculated seduction. It was part of a larger scheme orchestrated by her best friend, with me as the unwitting target. I heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly replaced everything as I'd found it. The spare key went back under the mat, and I took the stairs 2 at a time. In my truck, I sat in the parking garage and tried to process what I'd learned. Aven and Mila had been planning something for weeks, using Rylan as both a means to an end and a distraction from their real objective. But what was the real prize? My phone rang. Eli's number. "They're here," he said quietly. "Both of them. Aven and the BMW guy. I'll be right there." "Soren, they're not alone. There's a woman with them. Brunette, fancy car, looks like money." Mila Garvin, the puppet master herself. "Don't let them know you called me." "Already thought of that. I'm in the back office with the door closed." I started the truck and headed across town, my mind racing with possibilities. Whatever game they were playing, it was bigger than a simple affair, and I was about to find out just how deep the deception went. The auto shop was dark except for the office lights. I parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, staying in the shadows. Through the office window I could see 4 figures: Aven, Rylan, Mila, and my brother Eli. I crept closer until I could hear voices through the thin walls. "Told you this was a bad idea," Eli was saying. "It's temporary," Mila replied. "Just until we can arrange alternative meeting space." "What about Soren? He's already suspicious." "Soren is predictable," Aven said. "He'll file for divorce, take his settlement, and move on. He's not the vindictive type." "You sure about that?" Rylan asked. "Because that corporate complaint was pretty vindictive." "That was just wounded pride," Mila said. Men like him make a lot of noise but don't follow through. Trust me, I've been studying him for months. Studying me? I whispered. The important thing, Mila continued, is that we stick to the timeline. The Morrison merger closes in 2 weeks. Aven makes partner, I get promoted to senior associate, and we can start the next phase. What about the vendor investigation? Rylan asked. Irrelevant. You're transferring to California anyway, and by then Aven will be divorced and free to date whomever she wants. The firm can't object to a relationship between a partner and a former vendor. And if Soren causes problems? He won't, Aven said confidently. I know my husband. He's all bark, no bite. I'd heard enough. I walked around to the front entrance and knocked loudly. Eli, you in there? The conversation stopped. I heard scrambling, whispered voices, a door closing. Eli opened the front door. Hey, brother, what brings you by? Thought I'd check on that Mustang project. Making progress? Yeah, come take a look. I followed him to the garage bay where the classic car sat under bright work lights. Nice restoration. Must have taken weeks to get it this far. Months, actually. Attention to detail, you know? I appreciate attention to detail, especially when people think they're being clever. He looked at me sharply. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I know they're here, Eli. I heard the whole conversation. His shoulders sagged. I'm sorry, man. They put me in an impossible position. No, they didn't. You chose a side. It's not that simple. It never is. I walked toward the office door. Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Don't mind me, just collecting some information. The door opened and Mila Garvin stepped out. She was exactly as I remembered from company parties, polished, confident, with the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. Soren? What a surprise. We were just discussing some legal matters with Eli. Legal matters that require my wife's boyfriend? Rylan emerged from the office, followed by Aven. She looked embarrassed, but defiant. This isn't what it looks like, she started. Stop saying that. It's exactly what it looks like. I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos from her apartment. Just like this note from your devoted friend Mila. The color drained from Mila's face. You broke into Aven's apartment? I used the spare key under the mat, same way you've probably been using my brother's shop, with permission from someone who should know better. Soren, Eli said, let me explain. No need. I understand perfectly. My wife and her best friend have been running a long con, using her affair as cover for some larger scheme involving the Morrison account and a partnership position. That's not true, Aven protested. Really? Then explain the timeline. You rented the apartment before the hotel meeting. You bought the dress before you needed to impress anyone. You've been planning this for weeks, maybe months. Mila stepped forward. You're paranoid. Aven made a mistake. She's trying to fix it, and you're turning it into some conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory with documented evidence? Including your handwritten note about phases and prizes and targets? You took that out of context. Then provide the context. She glanced at Aven, then back at me. Fine. Yes, we've been planning Aven's career advancement. The Morrison account was an opportunity to showcase her skills, and yes, she developed feelings for Rylan during their collaboration. But there's no grand scheme, no deception beyond a woman trying to balance professional ambition with personal attraction. And the note about me suspecting nothing? About the partnership bid. We didn't want you getting your hopes up in case it fell through. Plausible, I admitted. Except for one problem. What's that? I don't believe you. The garage fell silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic. Here's what I think happened, I continued. You identified the Morrison account as a career opportunity. You encouraged Aven to pursue a relationship with Rylan to gain inside access and favorable treatment. When that worked, you helped her plan the affair as both a personal reward and professional insurance. That's ridiculous, Rylan said. Is it? Because you told me at the hotel that Aven approached you about the account, that she suggested the private meetings, that she bought the dress specifically to get your attention. Aven shot him a furious look. You told him that? He was asking direct questions. I thought honesty might help. Honesty, I repeated. Interesting concept. Let's try some more. Mila, what exactly is the next phase you mentioned? I don't know what you're talking about. The phase that starts after Aven makes partner and you get promoted. The one that doesn't involve Rylan. She crossed her arms. You're fishing. Maybe, but I'm a patient fisherman and I've got all night. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and smiled. Actually, I don't need all night. I just got confirmation that the Morrison merger has been suspended, pending a full investigation of vendor relationships and potential conflicts of interest. The room erupted in shocked voices. That's impossible, Mila said. How do you know that? Aven demanded. Because I filed a second complaint this afternoon, with documentation of ongoing personal relationships, secret meetings, and potential insider trading violations. Insider trading? Rylan went pale. That's a federal crime. Only if you're guilty. Are you guilty, Rylan? I never shared confidential information. But you had access to it, and you were sleeping with opposing counsel. Aven's firm represents Morrison, not opposes them. In the merger, yes. But what about the subsidiary lawsuits, the regulatory challenges, the environmental compliance issues? I was bluffing, but their faces told me I'd hit something. You don't know what you're talking about, Mila said, but her voice lacked conviction. Then explain it to me. Explain why my wife needed to seduce a vendor. Explain why you've been orchestrating secret meetings. Explain why you're so confident about partnership positions that haven't been announced yet. No one answered. I'll figure it out eventually, I said. I'm good at solving problems, and this is just another puzzle. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Eli? Find new friends. These ones are going to drag you down with them. Soren, wait. But I was already walking away, leaving them to contemplate the wreckage of their carefully laid plans. Round 2 was mine, but the fight was far from over. The next morning brought a call from Patricia Chen at Morrison Hospitality Group. Mr. Valden, we need to discuss your recent complaint in more detail. Can you come to our offices this afternoon? Of course. What time? 2 p.m. Ask for me at the front desk. Morrison's corporate headquarters occupied 3 floors of a glass tower downtown. The lobby was all marble and chrome, designed to intimidate visitors and impress clients. I announced myself to the receptionist and waited in a chair that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Patricia Chen turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, wearing a navy suit that suggested both authority and attention to detail. She led me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Thank you for coming, Mr. Valden. I have some follow-up questions about your allegations. I'm happy to help. She opened a file folder thick with documents. Your first complaint focused on vendor conduct violations, specifically personal relationships that might compromise professional judgment. Correct. Your second complaint mentions potential insider trading and conflicts of interest. Those are serious allegations that require substantial evidence. I understand. What evidence do you have? I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos from Aven's apartment. These documents were in my wife's possession. They suggest coordination between the law firm and the vendor that goes beyond normal professional collaboration. She studied the images carefully. This note mentions phases and prizes. What's your interpretation? That my wife and her colleague have been manipulating the vendor relationship for personal gain. The affair was part of a larger strategy to influence the merger terms. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof of actual information sharing? Not yet. But I have evidence of secret meetings, coordinated planning, and advanced knowledge of decisions that haven't been announced, such as partnership positions at the law firm. My wife and Mila Garvin seem confident about promotions that depend on the Morrison account's success. Patricia made notes on a legal pad. We've already suspended vendor privileges pending investigation. What additional action are you requesting? A full audit of all communications between your company and the law firm. Email records, phone logs, meeting schedules, document transfers. If there's been improper information sharing, it will show up in the data. That's an extensive undertaking. Morrison's reputation is worth protecting, isn't it? She smiled grimly. Indeed it is. We'll proceed with the comprehensive audit. What about the merger? Suspended indefinitely until we can verify the integrity of all parties involved. I thanked her and left, feeling like I'd lit a fuse on something much larger than a simple divorce case. The corporate investigation would take weeks, but it would eventually uncover whatever scheme Aven and Mila had been running. My next stop was Murphy's boxing gym. I needed to hit something, and a heavy bag was safer than human targets. Coach Mike was working with the same young fighter from before, drilling combinations on the focus mitts. "Harder!" he shouted. "You're not trying to massage my hands." The kid threw a vicious hook that made the mitts pop. "Better. Now do it again, but keep your feet moving." I changed into workout gear and started my warm-up routine. The familiar ritual helped clear my head: jump rope, shadow boxing, stretching, then the heavy bag. "You're back early," Coach Mike said, walking over after his fighter finished. "Stress relief. How's the marriage situation?" "Complicated. Turns out the affair was just the tip of the iceberg." "It usually is. People don't cheat in isolation. There's always something deeper." I strapped on gloves and started working the bag. Jab, cross, hook. The leather absorbed my frustration and anger, transforming it into technique. "Your form's improving," Coach Mike observed. "Anger management through violence?" "Controlled violence. The best kind." After an hour of training, I felt centered enough to think clearly. The investigation would take care of the professional misconduct, but I still needed to deal with the personal betrayal. Aven had made her choices, but she'd also been influenced by Mila's manipulation. My phone rang as I was leaving the gym. Unknown number. Soren Valden. "Mr. Valden, this is Detective Ray Morrison with the City Police. I'd like to speak with you about some allegations that have been made." My stomach dropped. "What kind of allegations?" "Breaking and entering, harassment, stalking. Can you come to the station?" "When?" "Now would be good." The police station was a squat brick building that smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Detective Morrison was a tired-looking man in his 50s, wearing a rumpled suit and the expression of someone who'd seen too much human stupidity. "Have a seat, Mr. Valden. We need to discuss your recent activities." "What activities?" "Your wife filed a complaint alleging that you broke into her apartment and have been following her. I used a spare key to enter property that's partially mine, since we're still married and I'm paying the bills. She says you've been stalking her, taking photos, interfering with her work. I documented evidence of adultery for divorce proceedings. That's not stalking, that's due diligence." He opened a file folder. "What about the corporate complaints? Your wife's colleague says you've been harassing their business partners." "I reported vendor conduct violations to the appropriate authorities. That's not harassment, that's civic duty." "You seem to have an answer for everything." "I seem to have followed the law while my wife broke her marriage vows and possibly several professional ethics rules." Detective Morrison leaned back in his chair. "Look, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen plenty of messy divorces. Usually the best thing for everyone is to keep it civil and let the lawyers sort it out." "I agree, but my wife and her friends seem to prefer drama. Or you're escalating a personal dispute into a public spectacle." "Detective, with respect, I've committed no crimes. I've filed legitimate complaints with appropriate authorities, documented evidence of adultery, and protected my financial interests during divorce proceedings. If that's criminal behavior, then half the divorced men in America should be in prison." He studied me for a long moment. "Your wife seems genuinely frightened of you." "My wife seems genuinely caught in a web of lies that's collapsing around her. She says you've changed, become vindictive and obsessive. She's right. I have changed. Finding out your wife is cheating tends to alter your perspective on trust and loyalty. But you're not threatening her. I'm divorcing her. That's the only threat she needs to worry about. He closed the file. I'm not going to arrest you, Mr. Valden, but I'm advising you to stay away from your wife's apartment, her workplace, and her friends. Let the divorce proceed through proper channels. Fair enough, but I'm not dropping the corporate complaints. That's between you and Morrison Hospitality. I left the police station feeling like I'd dodged a bullet, but also realizing that Aven and her allies were escalating their counterattack. The harassment allegations were clearly designed to discredit me before the investigation could reveal their misconduct. My phone buzzed with a text from Jace. Dad, we need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Park. Riverside Park was where I'd taught him to throw a baseball, ride a bike, and tie fishing knots. It felt appropriate for what might be our last conversation as father and son. I found him sitting on a bench overlooking the water, wearing the sullen expression that had become his default since adolescence. Mom says you broke into her apartment. I used her spare key to retrieve some documents. That's still breaking and entering. It's still my marriage and my right to investigate adultery. He turned to face me. Why are you doing this, Dad? Why can't you just let her go? Because she lied to me, son, for months, and the lies are bigger than just the affair. What do you mean? I sat down next to him and tried to find words that wouldn't completely destroy his relationship with his mother. Your mom and her friend Mila have been planning something that involves her affair, the Morrison account, and partnership positions at her firm. I don't know all the details yet, but it's not just about her finding happiness with another man. You sound paranoid. I sound like someone who's discovered that his wife has been playing a game with rules he didn't know existed. Even if that's true, why does it matter? You're getting divorced anyway. Because fraud matters. Because professional misconduct matters. Because the truth matters. Or because you can't stand that she's successful without you. The accusation hit home because it contained truth. I had struggled with Aven's rising career, her increasing independence, her growing confidence. But that wasn't why I was pursuing this investigation. Jace, I'm proud of your mother's success. I always have been. But success built on deception isn't success, it's fraud. You don't know that. The corporate investigation will determine that. He stood up. I hope you're wrong, Dad. For everyone's sake. So do I. He walked away, leaving me alone with my doubts and the growing certainty that I was in too deep to turn back now. The investigation had taken on a life of its own, and whatever the outcome, my family would never be the same. My phone rang. Patricia Chen, again. Mr. Valden, we've completed the preliminary audit of communications between Morrison and the law firm. What did you find? Irregularities that warrant a full investigation. We're expanding the inquiry to include potential securities violations. Securities violations? Information sharing that could constitute insider trading. The FBI will be taking over from here. I sat on the park bench, watching the river flow past, and wondered what I'd set in motion. The simple desire to understand my wife's betrayal had uncovered something much larger and more dangerous. But there was no going back now. The FBI investigation moved faster than I'd expected. Within a week, agents were interviewing everyone connected to the Morrison account, including me. Special Agent Sarah Collins was a no-nonsense woman in her 30s who treated the case like a puzzle to be solved rather than a personal drama. We met at a downtown coffee shop, away from the formal intimidation of federal offices. Mr. Valden, thank you for agreeing to speak with us. Happy to help. She opened a tablet and pulled up documents. We've reviewed your complaints and the evidence you provided. The communications between your wife's law firm and the Morrison vendor suggest coordination that goes beyond normal professional collaboration. What kind of coordination? Information sharing about merger terms, regulatory challenges, and competitor activities. If proven, it could constitute securities fraud. How serious is that? Federal prison serious, 10 to 20 years depending on the scope of the conspiracy. I felt a chill. I wasn't trying to send anyone to prison. I just wanted to understand why my wife was cheating. Sometimes, personal investigations uncover larger crimes. The question is whether you're willing to cooperate with our inquiry. What does that involve? Continued access to evidence you've gathered, testimony about what you observed, and possibly wearing a recording device during future interactions with the subjects. A wire? A small digital recorder. Insurance in case they make admissions that support the criminal charges. I thought about Aven, Mila, and Rylan sitting in federal prison because I'd followed my cheating wife to a hotel bar. Agent Collins, I want justice, but I don't want to destroy lives over what might have been poor judgment rather than criminal intent. That's not your decision to make, Mr. Valden. If crimes were committed, they need to be prosecuted regardless of the personal relationships involved. And if I refuse to cooperate? Then we proceed without your help, but we might subpoena you anyway if this goes to trial. She handed me her business card. Think about it, but don't think too long. Grand jury proceedings start next month. I left the coffee shop feeling like I'd opened a door that couldn't be closed. The investigation had escalated beyond my control, and people I'd once cared about were facing federal prosecution. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. Need to see you. Important. I drove to his shop, wondering if he'd been contacted by the FBI too. I found him in the back office, looking like he hadn't slept in days. They came to see me, he said without preamble. Federal agents? Yeah. Asked about the meetings here, what I overheard, whether I saw any document exchanges. What did you tell them? The truth. That your wife and her friends were using my shop for private conversations, that I heard them talking about business deals and timelines. Did they ask you to cooperate? They want me to record conversations if anyone contacts me again. He rubbed his face. Soren, I'm scared. This is way bigger than I thought. It's bigger than any of us thought. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Part of me wants to see them face consequences for what they did. Part of me thinks this has gone too far. They made their choices. So did I, and now everyone's paying the price. My phone rang. Aven's number. We need to talk, she said without greeting. Face to face. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, Soren, there are things you don't understand. Try me. Not over the phone. Meet me at the house. Our house. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The house felt strange after weeks of separation, like visiting a museum of my former life. Aven was in the kitchen, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual professional attire. She looked exhausted. Thank you for coming. What do you want, Aven? To explain, to apologize, to ask for your help. My help? She sat down at the kitchen table where this had all started. The FBI contacted me. They're treating this like a criminal conspiracy. Isn't it? No. It was poor judgment, ethical lapses, maybe professional misconduct, but not criminal conspiracy. Then explain what actually happened. She took a deep breath. Mila identified the Morrison account as a career opportunity for both of us. She suggested I work closely with Rylan to ensure favorable treatment for our firm. Work closely how? Professional collaboration that became personal attraction. I didn't plan to have feelings for him, but I did. And the secret meetings? To discuss sensitive merger details away from office gossip and potential leaks. The apartment? A place where we could meet privately without compromising either of our marriages. The documents I found? Notes about career planning and relationship management. Taken out of context, they look sinister, but they were just two friends strategizing about professional advancement. I studied her face, looking for tells. What about the insider information? There was no insider information. Rylan shared publicly available details about merger timelines and regulatory requirements. Nothing that wasn't already in the public filings. The FBI thinks otherwise. The FBI is wrong. They're seeing conspiracy where there was only ambition and poor personal choices. So why do you need my help? Because you started this investigation. Your complaints triggered the federal inquiry. If you withdraw them, explain that you misunderstood the situation, maybe they'll back off. You want me to lie to federal agents? I want you to clarify that your original concerns were about adultery, not securities fraud. I leaned back in my chair. Even if I believed you, which I'm not sure I do, I can't stop a federal investigation. You could try. Why should I? Because despite everything that's happened between us, I'm still the mother of your son. Because 20 years in federal prison won't serve justice, it will destroy lives. You should have thought about that before you started whatever scheme you and Mila cooked up. There was no scheme? Then why did Mila's note talk about phases and prizes and targets? Because she has a flair for dramatic language, because she sees everything as a game or competition. Including my marriage? Aven's composure cracked. I'm sorry about the affair. I'm sorry about the lies. I'm sorry about all of it. But I can't go to prison for making bad personal choices. Maybe you should have made better choices. Maybe you should ask yourself why you're so eager to see me destroyed. The accusation stung because it forced me to examine my own motives. Was I pursuing justice or revenge? Was I protecting society from financial fraud or punishing my wife for betraying me? I'm not eager to see you destroyed, Aven, but I'm not willing to lie to protect you from the consequences of your actions. Then we have nothing more to discuss. She walked me to the door, and I left wondering if I'd just condemned the mother of my child to federal prison. That evening, I sat in my apartment. I'd rented a small place across town and tried to sort through my feelings. The investigation had revealed that my marriage was built on lies, but it had also set in motion events that could destroy multiple lives. My phone rang. Agent Collins. Mr. Valden, have you decided about cooperation? I need more information. What exactly are you charging them with? Conspiracy to commit securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. Money laundering? Payments between the law firm and vendor that appear designed to disguise the true nature of their relationship. What payments? Consulting fees, expense reimbursements, gifts, all documented in financial records we've subpoenaed. The scope of the charges surprised me. How much money are we talking about? Potentially millions, depending on how the merger terms were influenced by the insider information. And if I cooperate? We'd like you to record any future conversations with your wife or her associates. See if they make admissions about the conspiracy. What if they don't admit to anything criminal? Then we proceed with the evidence we have. I made my decision. I'll do it. Good. We'll set up the equipment tomorrow. After I hung up, I poured myself a drink and wondered what I'd become. 6 weeks ago, I was a faithful husband with a boring job and a quiet life. Now, I was a federal informant preparing to record conversations with my estranged wife. But some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. And some truths, once revealed, demand consequences. The recording device was smaller than I'd expected, about the size of a thumb drive. Agent Collins showed me how to activate it and explained the legal requirements for recording conversations. Remember, you can't entrap them into making incriminating statements. Just let them talk naturally. What if they don't contact me? They will. People facing federal charges always want to negotiate. She was right. That afternoon, Mila Garvin called. Soren, we need to meet. There are things about this situation that you don't understand. Such as things that could change your perspective on what actually happened. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a diner on the outskirts of town. I activated the recording device before I went inside. Mila was waiting in a corner booth, looking like she'd aged 5 years in the past week. Her usual polished appearance had been replaced by the haggard look of someone under extreme stress. Thank you for coming. What did you want to discuss? the federal investigation, the charges they're considering, the impact on innocent people. Such as? Your son, for one. Do you realize what this will do to Jace, having his mother in federal prison? I realize what Aven's choices have done to our family. Her choices were influenced by circumstances you don't know about. Enlighten me. Mila glanced around the diner, then leaned forward. The Morrison account was in trouble. The merger was falling apart due to regulatory challenges and competitor interference. Our firm was going to lose the account and possibly face malpractice claims. So we needed inside information to salvage the deal. Rylan had access to confidential details about the regulatory process and competitor strategies, and Aven seduced him to get that information. It wasn't that calculated. The attraction was real, but yes, we leveraged it for professional advantage. That's securities fraud. That's business. Everyone does it. Not everyone gets caught. She sat back. What do you want, Soren? Money? Public vindication? Your wife back? I want the truth. I just gave it to you. You gave me a confession to federal crimes. Her face went pale. What? I pulled out the recording device and set it on the table. You just admitted to conspiracy to commit securities fraud. You're recording this? The FBI asked me to cooperate with their investigation. She stared at the device like it was a snake. You bastard. You destroyed my marriage as part of a criminal conspiracy. What did you expect? I expected human decency. From the woman who orchestrated my wife's affair? That's rich. She stood up abruptly. This conversation is over. The investigation isn't. She left without another word, and I sat in the diner booth feeling like I'd just crossed another line I couldn't uncross. The recording would probably seal Mila's fate, and possibly Aven's too. But as I replayed her words in my mind, I realized she'd confirmed what I'd suspected all along. The affair was part of a larger scheme, and my wife was guilty of more than adultery. The truth was finally emerging, but it was uglier than I'd imagined. The grand jury indictment came down 3 weeks later. Aven, Mila, and Rylan were all charged with conspiracy to commit securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. The amounts involved were staggering, nearly $5 million in artificially inflated merger terms based on insider information. I learned about the charges from the morning news, watching my wife's arrest on television like any other interested citizen. The reporter described it as a complex white-collar conspiracy involving a prominent local law firm and corporate vendor relationships. My phone rang constantly. Reporters, neighbors, colleagues who'd heard about my role in the investigation. I ignored most of the calls, but answered when I saw Jace's number. Dad, they arrested Mom. I know. I saw the news. Did you know this was going to happen? I knew there was an investigation. I didn't know when charges would be filed. But you cooperated with them. You helped them build the case. I provided evidence of what I observed. You destroyed our family. Your mother destroyed our family when she decided to commit federal crimes. She made mistakes, but she doesn't deserve prison. That's for a jury to decide. He hung up on me, and I wondered if I'd lost my son along with my wife. The next call was from Agent Collins. Mr. Valden, we need you to testify before the grand jury next week. About what specifically? Your observations of the conspiracy, the evidence you gathered, the recorded conversation with Mila Garvin. Will Aven be there? She'll be represented by counsel, but defendants don't typically appear before grand juries. What should I expect? Questions about what you saw, heard, and documented. The prosecutors will walk you through the timeline and evidence. How long will it take? A few hours. Maybe less if your testimony is straightforward. After she hung up, I sat in my apartment and tried to process the magnitude of what was happening. My simple desire to understand my wife's affair had uncovered a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme that would likely send 3 people to federal prison for decades. The grand jury testimony was exactly as Agent Collins had described: methodical questions about dates, observations, and evidence. The prosecutors were thorough, but not hostile, treating me as a witness rather than an investigator. Mr. Valden, when you first observed your wife leaving the house in unusual clothing, what was your reaction? Suspicion. She'd been working late frequently, and her behavior had changed. How had it changed? More secretive, less communicative, defensive when asked about her schedule. What did you do with that suspicion? I followed her to see where she was going. And what did you observe? A meeting with Ryland Cross at the Riverside Hotel bar. Intimate conversation, physical contact, consistent with a romantic relationship. What action did you take? I documented the meeting with photographs and reported the vendor relationship to Morrison Hospitality Group. Why did you report it? Because their posted policies prohibited undisclosed personal relationships between vendors and clients. Did you expect your report to trigger a criminal investigation? No, I expected a corporate compliance review. When did you first suspect criminal activity? When I found documents in my wife's apartment suggesting coordination between her firm and the vendor that went beyond normal professional collaboration. The questions continued for 2 hours, covering every aspect of my investigation and the evidence I'd gathered. When it was over, the prosecutor thanked me and said I might be called to testify at trial. Will there definitely be a trial? That depends on whether the defendants accept plea agreements. I left the courthouse feeling drained but oddly relieved. My part in the investigation was essentially finished. Whatever happened next would be determined by lawyers, judges, and juries. But the personal reckoning was just beginning. That evening, I went to Murphy's boxing gym for what had become my regular stress relief session. Coach Mike was working with a new fighter, teaching him footwork and defensive positioning. "Keep your hands up. You're dropping your left." The kid threw a combination and reset his stance. "Better. Now move your feet while you punch. Boxing isn't a standing contest." I changed into workout gear and started my routine. The familiar rhythm of jump rope, shadow boxing, and heavy bag work helped clear my head. "You've been coming here a lot lately," Coach Mike observed during a break. "Stress management? How's the legal situation?" "Grand jury voted to indict. Trial's probably 6 months away." "You okay with that?" "I'm okay with the truth coming out. Even if it destroys people you used to care about?" The question hit home. Even then. "That's cold, brother." "It's honest." He studied me for a moment. "You've changed since this started. Harder, more focused, but also more isolated. Sometimes isolation is clarity, and sometimes it's just loneliness dressed up as wisdom." I finished my workout and drove home, thinking about his words. Had I become harder? Definitely. More isolated? Absolutely. But I'd also discovered strength I didn't know I possessed, and principles I wouldn't compromise. My phone was buzzing when I walked into my apartment. Aven's number. "We need to talk." "I don't think that's appropriate while you're facing criminal charges. Please, Soren, one conversation, as the father of my child." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown. She was already waiting when I arrived, looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered. "Thank you for coming." "What do you want, Aven?" "To understand why you hate me so much." "I don't hate you. I hate what you did." "I made mistakes. You committed federal crimes. I got caught up in something bigger than I understood. You orchestrated something bigger than you could control." She leaned forward. "Do you really believe I'm a criminal mastermind? That I planned a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme? I believe you made choices that led to criminal consequences. And you're satisfied with destroying my life over those choices?" "I'm satisfied with the truth being revealed. The truth is that I'm a flawed person who made bad decisions under pressure. The truth is that I loved you for 16 years before I betrayed you. The truth is that our son will grow up with his mother in prison because you couldn't forgive human weakness. Her words stung because they contained elements of truth mixed with manipulation. The truth, I said quietly, is that you chose your career and your affair over your family. The truth is that you committed crimes to advance your professional ambitions. The truth is that you're facing consequences for actions you took deliberately and repeatedly. I never meant for it to go this far, but you meant for it to go somewhere. You meant to deceive me, to use Rylan, to manipulate the Morrison account for personal gain. Yes. Then we have nothing more to discuss. I stood to leave, but she grabbed my arm. Soren, please. I know I hurt you, but don't let revenge destroy what's left of our family. This isn't revenge. This is justice. What's the difference? Justice serves society. Revenge serves ego. And which one are you serving? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman I'd married, the mother of my child, the person I'd planned to grow old with. But I also saw the stranger who'd betrayed everything we'd built together. I'm serving the truth, I said finally, whatever the cost. She released my arm and sat back down. Then I guess we're finished. We were finished the night you put on that red dress. I left her sitting in the coffee shop and walked out into the evening air. The city lights reflected off the river, and for the first time in months I felt a sense of peace. The investigation was complete. The charges were filed. The truth was revealed. Everything else was just consequence. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom and watched my wife plead guilty to conspiracy to commit securities fraud. She received 8 years in federal prison with possibility of parole after 5. Mila got 10 years. Rylan, who cooperated with prosecutors, received 3 years and testified against his former partners. Jace attended the sentencing hearing, but didn't speak to me. He sat with Aven's family, treating me like a stranger who'd destroyed their lives for personal satisfaction. Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd crossed the line from justice to revenge. Maybe I'd become the villain in my own story. But as I watched Aven led away in handcuffs, I felt no satisfaction, no vindication, no sense of victory. I felt only the hollow certainty that some betrayals can't be forgiven, some truths can't be ignored, and some consequences can't be avoided. The dress she'd never worn for me had led to a prison uniform she'd wear for years, and I was the one who'd followed the thread that unraveled everything. In the end, karma didn't play a cruel joke. It played the only joke it knows, the truth.